Hello, viewers. Welcome to this Thought Leadership Fireside Chat brought to you by ETHR World and Coursera. As you're aware, this is a part of a CRISP series where we invite titans from the industry to discover the vision, game plan, and insights on building work and worker of the future. In this episode, we have with us Swaminathan R, CPO, WNS Global, and Dallas Krishnan, MD Enterprise, India, Australia, and New Zealand, Coursera. Welcome to this show, Swami and Dallas. So good to have you here. Swami, my first question is for you. Over the last 2 years, the move to remote work and accelerated digital transformation have deepened the disconnect around skills. How has it impacted the already existing skill gap in your industry? And what are some of the critical talent challenges you're facing in your industry?
Yeah, I mean, great question, but slightly disconnected with the question, I would say, Pooja. Look, an accelerated digitized world would have solved the problem, right? So I don't think remote working, was the initial challenge all of us faced with. If accompanied with accelerated digital, then we should not have had information asymmetry, right? So I would, say that yes. Look, typically, what happens in workplace, right? I mean, there are teams that work together to get a common outcome, right? And the first foundation for them to deliver or perform is ensuring that each and every one of them has some equal level of information about the need, right? And this topic is actually not very much discussed, but information asymmetry is the biggest problem to solve. Right. So do they have all the information to get something done? Right. And if we had enough tech and digital enablement to solve that, we probably could have been in a better place. So I would say accelerated digital mitigated most of the problem. Acceleration of digital tools, enablement, whatever said and done. And look, what has happened for us is, look, internally as an organization, we work really on war footing to enable certain gaps in competencies, for a lack of better term, I don't use the word skills. I use competencies, very consciously here, so that they can demonstrate competencies which can get witnessed as skills in my view. Right, we were doing that, but actually the huge gap we see is in the workforce that is coming to be a part of the workforce, right? The educated set of people or the people who are going through education, we see a huge gap in that. Right there, this has played havoc. Right, so what is also right now the talent crunch or the great resignation or the talent war, right, is technically a supply issue. Right, I don't think the demand has shot through the roof. Right, the demand is only growing arithmetically. Right, the supply is not able to provide the resource arithmetically. It seems like a geometric problem to us, right? So that's the bigger problem we are facing is when we go out to the college and bring in people, or when we go to the market and get people who are from the education system or the knowledge system, the gap that we need to fulfill to them to get them productive, has gone through a sea change. So there is a lot of challenge in that area, right? Within the organization, to be very honest, remote working worked well, right? So none of us, most of the companies in the ITS setup, you would have seen, except for the 20th of March to, March 20 to probably August 20, we all struggled because there was on and off because suddenly we went into a lockdown, which we were not prepared. Suddenly we went into, remote working. There was an infrastructure glitch there. Right, because for a company like us, which predominantly operates on a safe system for a customer, right, which is more or less desktop enabled, to move into a mobility based device was a big transformation that we had to go through. Likewise, many of our peers, right? Now, once that phase is over, the resources came back to be productive. And look, the headwind, the lead indicators are the revenues and margins. Most of the peers, most of the industry, are at probably at the right level. So probably that part of the problem, the employees themselves solved, right? Let me take a pause here, right? I think the problem for us was most information asymmetry to get the teams to deliver what the customer wants to deliver or what we want to deliver. And the bigger challenge of a remote working is the relationships transition to be a task-based relationship than a collaboration, right? So probably it will impact down the line, right? When you have the innovation portion of the organization, will surely get impacted, right? Because there is no side chat that probably can lead to an idea, that can lead to an outcome, that can lead to something great, right? I think that part, this whole remote working part, we were not enabled. And right, as you said, if there are digital tools that could have enabled that much better than most of us, what we had was a Zoom and a Microsoft Teams, and whatever visual interface devices is what we had, not technically good communication platforms. And I think that's where I would take a pause, probably well into it further, and that's my point of view.
Sure.
Interesting points there, Swami. And I really like the fact that you said that if we already had accelerated digital transformation, probably there would not be any, really talent challenges, but it's yet to materialize. Dallas, I'd like to ask you, being a global learning partner with customers across industries and regions, what are the changes, challenges, and trends you've observed in the IT sector in the last 2 years?
Thanks, Pooja. As a follow-up question, I think I will put this as Swami has already answered my question, right? but let me try and paraphrase at a much broader level, because I think the way Swami did bring it across is context to WNS and what he is observing. And we have a slightly broader view of things, and it's not too different. But I'll just summarize this into probably three areas. So first and foremost, digital transformation, and it's a much abused word, but let's look at it this way. There is an accelerated digital transformation across sectors. Now, be it in technology, services companies, in the way they work, in the way they delivered. I think probably credit to the companies in the way they pivoted, right? I think in less than 2 weeks, people pivoted, and then they delivered the outcomes of their customers without losing a heartbeat, right? So there was an element of transformation that accelerated out there in the way remote work was enabled. But there is another part. There were a lot of other industries, traditional industries, which the tech services industries serve, which is where there has been a tremendous demand, right? Now, that has led to the mix of business and the way a lot of the tech services companies were serving. There was a lot of accelerated demand coming in the digital skills and that demanded newer type of skills to be there. Sometimes it was not just about, Swami also spoke about the talent gap in the campuses, and that's where it hit the most, because there was a huge amount of demand coming in digital transformation in a lot of industries, where the acceleration of automation improved quite a bit, where the acceleration of customer engagement technologies, a lot of investment went into digital investments into the customer-facing processes as the first step, right? That was probably the first area where we saw the huge growth. And if you see the stocks and businesses of some of those companies like a Salesforce, you would see tremendous amount of results that they had through the pandemic, because that's the biggest pivot that they had to do. That led to demand shortage in the context of specific skills, right? So suddenly we had demand in certain areas where we didn't have the talent pool in the country, preparing them for jobs that were already available for people to get into, right? So that takes me to the second part, which is one is finding the right talent with the kind of jobs that were emerging. This is true both for new talent, which is what Swami alluded to, the fresh talent, but it was also true for the fact that there were a lot of workforce that needed to be reskilled, right? And that's the other part of work that people needed to do, is because there is demand shift. Here are the kind of work that is reduced. Here are the kind of new that has come in. So there was a huge demand that we started seeing in the context of reskilling of workforce in these new digital areas, right? So that's the second part in the context of finding the right talent early stage, and upskilling the right talent and reskilling the right talent for the jobs that emerged. Third, I feel, which is this is a more forward-looking one, and I'm now looking beyond the COVID piece, is how this will potentially transform even further, right? The technology innovation is not going to slow down, right? Probably the slowest rate of change that we see is probably today. So this will mean a lot more new skills emerging. 5G auctions went out yesterday. Sunil Bharti Mittal spoke about how within a week of he paying his money, he had his spectrum allocation letter in his, with him. The minister speaks about 5G getting rolled out in a month's time. And you can think about emerging areas that are coming in new technology, right? In education, for example, we think about how metaverse can significantly change education in many, many areas, right? So there are other impact areas as well. So there are this emerging tech that is only going to accelerate. And that will create an even bigger pool of talent gap in the future. And we need to start thinking about today's problems, today's acceleration, and also think about the other part that this is the time also to start looking for a little ahead and start planning for the future skills required.
Very interesting points, Dallas. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm going to pick on Swami and ask him that, with 5G, edge computing, metaverse, these kind of technologies coming to our disposal, how are you planning to, kind of modernize corporate training and building an enterprise learning framework catering to the demand of hybrid cross-functional workforce?
Too many heavy terms, but just trying to get it simple. Look, I think the most overused terminology in any industry is this concept of skilling, right? I actually, believe I'm actually amazed at our education system. Take a school, right? I mean, average delivery mechanism, inconsistent delivery mechanism, archaic design, but average consistent output, right? None of us have been able to replicate that, right? Whatever head, shoulder, and above the whole thing, the primary education in this country is far superior, right? To have delivered with inconsistent delivery ecosystem and a good design that probably went a long way back, right? And this thing, why it is efficient is because, look, education is logically built on a good pedagogy, right? It is layered, right? So we moved away from skilling within our firm 5 years back. We said we need to re-educate our people. Look, what we are talking about digital is, when I go into a deeper conversation, I said, what is digital, right? Now, is Facebook digital or tech, right? How do you differentiate tech and digital? There are no answers, right? Our business is premised on running customer operations, right? We are supposed to transform customers' operation and help them serve their end customer well, period, right? That's what we do, right? In that, what is happening is, if I simply look at and give you an example of a claims process, right? You go bank your car, right? You lodge a claim, technically that process in the good old days and business process outsourcing is what used to be called a see and type, right? Somebody will call you, you see, okay, lodge a complaint, right? And then that person will go through your policy and say, what is allowable, not allowable. That's judgment, right? And somebody will engage with the repair and maintenance and get your car out, right? Now, at the upstream, all these processes have got integrated. There is one drone coming and doing one. Inside, there is an automated AI engine that is reflecting on the policy. So what is required for you, a see and type and hear and talk in the good old BPO industry, have got converged. Now, can you do that without re-educating somebody? Because this is a commerce graduate who's trying to do a job, right? He or she does not know tech. If they had known quant, they would know coding, right? Now, this whole loosely terminology, look, I can probably train a barber to be a plumber. That is reskilling, right? I cannot train a commerce graduate to code because he didn't choose quant as a fundamental, right? So I have to re-educate him, right? So we created a separate function called WNS education, where we said, you will go through 1700 hours of robotic process automation, right? Where we will have a great design. It should stand test of bad delivery. That means anybody can train you, but you will still learn something better than what you learned. It is like grade 1 to grade 12, right? I mean, I presume all of us would have struggled with algebra when the first time it got understood. And the only thing we remember is A plus B the whole square. We don't remember anything more than that. And trust me, as a mathematician, I can tell you that, right? And nobody understands the application. So I probably think, Pooja, you guys should say this, and look, what is a company like a Coursera doing is enabling re-education. The problem where we don't know how to use Coursera is we don't have a design to put that as a learning plan. Right? Because all the courses are available. Look, you don't, don't get me wrong, Dallas, right? It's available even in Google, right? The problem is to coordinate and layer it into a plan and have a consistent delivery mechanism and allow somebody else to assimilate, right? So I think my simple view is, look, if there is any fundamental change, right, you need re-education. You cannot have reskilling, right? It has to get layered so that the resource feel comfortable. Reskilling means is, can you be a driver of a car to a driver of a heavy duty engine, and can you be a driver of a puller? It's probably a skill getting marginally improved based on everything, right? But for a guy who studied account, debit, credit, if I'm going to ask her to do tomorrow was no code, low code, no code. Now, it is just not possible without me orienting her from grade 1. Right? Now, do we have the patience to do it as an industry? If the industry and the individual companies call, right? And you have to explain why they need to do. So for me, I would simply say, yes, it is very much important to address the talent gap. We are in the journey of re-educating our people to the point that they are useful to our customer. And in our company, we simply say we give the gift of staying relevant. Right? We simply say that. We said, why do you work for WNS? We say that we give you the gift of staying relevant. Right? Because I'm not going to make him a pilot, right? He's working in interlining in airline. Right? I'm not going to tell him tomorrow you're going to become a pilot. Right? I'm going to tell him that, hey, interlining in airline, probably I'll teach you interlining in hotels. Right? Similar concept, but different asset class. So did I answer you? Because broadly, that is our point of view.
Yeah. You brought up a very important point, and this is a lot of food for thought for the viewers also, the difference between re-education and reskilling, and the in-depth meaning behind both those words. Dallas, Swami raised some pertinent questions about enterprise learning. I'd like to ask you, how is that evolving now?
Yeah, and you know what? I'm glad that Swami articulated the challenges that he spoke about. Especially in the context of the catalog being available, learning platforms being available, and then the need of how do you prepare a person with the right competency, right? And I won't use the word skill today because I can see Swami is a strong competency based leader background. So let me just split it into this. So we have been in this enterprise engagement for about 5 odd years, right? So when we started off about 10 years back, as a company, our first evolution was bringing courses from the top places, let's make it credentialed, that comes from the topmost universities or from the top companies, right? It's not anybody teaches, it is who teaches, right? So idea being credential content always is more acceptable in the context of the quality and the outcomes that it can deliver. But that led to as we were deploying those platforms and we learned, we started seeing simpler metrics, and we were measuring simpler things like how many hours did people spend on it, right? How many hours of learning. But it quickly went into an area where we started realizing the impact wasn't too visible, right? Because it was left to the individual, right? Looking back, we now term that phase as an open learning phase, right? So that was the phase that first evolved. Then came this challenge. Okay, now this is not working out. What should we do? And to Swami's point, we actually went to the second part, which was creating these collections, right? We started then, okay, here is a cloud collection. Here is a BI collection. Here is a data collection. Here is, so we made it much more specific. And within, that was the next part of the journey. There was the leadership piece, or here was a soft skills piece. So there are a bunch of collections that we created. There were domain collections that we created on industry and stuff like that. And then those collections became a support for learning teams to then curate, but it still needed the learning team to do some work. We invested in a set of, along with the platform access, we invested in a set of resources who were called skills transformation resources, who would help in this context of taking the heavy work of creating programs from the L&D, and we started creating that, as a value-added service on the platform. Now that was good up to a point, but then learning keeps evolving, the course catalog keeps evolving, the size becomes much bigger. Yet we found the learners' completion rates were not going up, right? So that was this next challenge. We said, okay, this is around 3 years into the platform. This is last year, 2020, when we pushed everything up. The average completion rates in the range of 38%, right? So that's what we were noticing. So then came the context. We spoke to business leaders and said, what matters to you, right? So business leaders, like Swami would come and say, I don't care whether somebody completes a course or whether they have a certification or whether they have done 50 hours of content. What cares to me that does he have the right skills and competency to deliver my business, right? So it was a very simple statement. That's what I want. We went back to the learners and we asked the learners, what do you think is more important to you? Completion of courses and certificates or skills developed? No surprise, 75% of the learners were actually more motivated by the fact that they could actually pick up a new skill based on which, to Swami's point, gift of staying relevant. That was top of the mind, right? They wanted to stay relevant, right? So that emerged, and from there is where I think early last year is when we retransformed our entire platform into this competency role skill based platform. It's no longer a collection. It's no longer a catalog. We worked with World Economic Forum and created this platform of skills. There are 80,000 skills that are mapped. Anything that comes onto the platform is tagged to a certain skill. A set of skills builds a set of competencies. A set of competencies builds a role. All right. So see, the role-based learning is where the platform and the needs, what we see is where the market is evolving. Now, there is a need for maturity, especially this is very true in IT services, the industry that Swami is in. They are far ahead, but there are others who are still in the early stage of journey of trying to do digital learning, trying to do still competent, guided learning or, focus-based learning, collection-based learning. But in the IT services, this competency-based learning, role-based learning is where it is emerging the most, right? Along with that, there is people to figure out there is another insight that we're starting to see that, okay, now I've built a skill. Now, what is considered an impactful skill, right? I've finished a program, I've finished my certification, I've done my 15 projects. So there was a skill scoring and an assessment mechanism based on the hands-on projects that people do that tells you where between me and Swami, both of us are, let's say, DevOps developers in the, at a mid-career level. Our skills could be very unique. And Dallas's graph looks like this. And that's where we are moving into. So what we're calling it as a data-packed resume. And Swami's graph looks like this. I am great at data visualization and site reliability engineering under DevOps, whereas Swami is probably brilliant at both. So he's the one I can charge $75 an hour and Dallas will be at $35 an hour resource, right? So the context of bringing that quantification of that skill in the context of business impact is where we are seeing the tech services industry move. And that's where I think a lot of the innovations that we have built on the platform have been focused on of late.
Interesting point, Dallas. And we are running out of time. So I'll just take a brief statement from both of you, because this is one of the most pertinent questions which viewers want to know. What are the effective ways of assessing the impact of your learning initiatives? Swami, 1 point from you, and Dallas, 1 point from you before we close.
I don't think we should even assess. It's a journey. Since you said 1 point, this is another 2-hour debate. So, I think again, I'll leave with a small point, right? Look, people should understand, right? Skills are morely transferable. Let's say project management is a skill, right? A competency is defined with a role. It brings knowledge, attitude, behavior,
Yes.
everything, right? And I think the world is grossly confused between the two, right? I think once you have clarity, manufacturing companies don't get confused because there is beautiful division of labor, right? The problem with knowledge industry is we don't have great division of labor because we believe everybody will become one vice president, for lack of better term, right? So, the responsibility of a learning organization is to categorize skills And enable skills, that means they'll have far more transferable people that will enable fungibility, right? You have more project managers, you do well, right? But again, understand for a job what competency is required and wrap around with the skills required for that, right? And then an organization like Coursera, you go to Coursera website, right? You'll see academies. An academy is a culmination of various set of bodies of knowledge that comes into a space to enable a skill that can translate to a competency, right? I think even if you go to their website, that's how that journey goes actually, right? I at least in B2C, right?
Yeah.
That's how it goes.
That's a B2C, right?
Right. Since I've seen that, right? So I mean, we should leave to the viewers at a point that focus on skills. That means focus on skills that are transferable, that can help your company in a big way. And also focus on competency and try to know the difference between.
Dallas.
So Pooja, I would love to have people like Swami sitting on the other side and focus on the journey and the process and impacting outcomes. But at the same time, we know that at the end of the day, in many cases, many organizations, these questions do get asked in the context of ROI, right? So we go in front of a CFO, we go in front of the board and there are various metrics that we have seen, right? I think probably the most esoteric metric is where we have been able to correlate an industry's key emerging skills, the ranking of that organization, because on the platform we are able to rank where the skills of a particular organization is, right? So hence we know that cutting edge skills in this industry, in this company X is at this level, and in these areas they are behind, in certain other areas they are ahead. So there is a correlation where we see that the top companies with the top skills that are the most in-demand skills in that sector quite naturally have better financial and hence better stock performance. So there is a correlation that is available, that skilling is not a simple value add or a benefit. It is actually has a direct proportionate impact in the company's performance, business performance, which takes all the way to stock performance as an outcome. But there are other aspects as well, right? So a second aspect is typically talent retention. I think I love the way Swami spoke about I'm sure gift of staying relevant is also the context saying that, you stay here, you will stay relevant because we'll invest in you, right? So that context of talent retention is another aspect that we see as a key measure in many companies. It's a softer aspect, but then when your people know that this is a place where I can learn and stay relevant, especially in the tech services industry, they will stay with you, and that definitely adds to the benefit of talent retention. Then there are other softer things, right? The context of buy versus build in the talent acquisition is a big issue today. It's always known that building talent is much cheaper than acquiring talent. The cost of talent is a huge issue in services industry, right? So hence the cost of hiring is something that in organizations that have far mature programs of this nature tend to have much lower hiring costs, right? So these I would call as some of the key ROI parameters that we have measured. There are some published reports that are available. It's amazing the kind of returns that people can get when you focus on building the skills in the right approach.
Very interesting points, Dallas. So thank you, Dallas, and thank you, Swami, for joining us for this engaging discussion on a very topical topic. Both of you have generously shared your viewpoints and insights, and I'm sure the audience will really benefit from these and will be, there'll be great actionable takeaways for them. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thanks for having us here, Pooja.